Hey everyone, welcome to Table Touches. I'm Eric Brown and I'm here with Chef Christian Fischer as my guest today. So, welcome, Christian.
How are you, Eric? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. It's a nice day out here finally. So we got through the heat wave and then the monsoon, and now it seems to be a regular day.
Yeah,
It's looking like a good day out.
yeah. I'm located in Connecticut. Listen, we have the same weather you do. So,
So Christian and I are working together on a project, the Business Growth Academy, and Christian's
mm,
also a co-founder of the Culinary Executive Mastermind. But I'll let you introduce yourself and just talk about other projects you're working on, sort of where you come from,
mhm.
your history, because it's lengthy, so you got a lot of experience and a lot to share with people. I think that would be watching.
Yeah. Again, my name is Christian Fischer, and as you can tell on my accent, I'm not from the beautiful state of Connecticut. So I'm native Austrian. I was born and raised in a small town in Austria outside of Innsbruck. Spent most of my time on the eastern side of Austria. My parents had a hotel for almost 60 years, and I grew up in the hotel industry. And after school, I came home. I had to work. I called it slavery. My dad called it discipline. So I've been in the food industry really all my life. And as I was 12, I moved out from home because that's when we finished school in Austria. And I started a 6-year culinary apprenticeship, which eventually turned out to be 7 years. I had my first restaurant at the age of 19. I had six by the time I was 23. Then a company named Nestle came to me and said, "Hey, we want to buy your restaurant concept and make it part of the restaurants for Stouffer hotels." And first I said no. 6 months later, I said yes, and then worked with them for 18 years. They offered me a job for 20, and been here in the US. Had the opportunity to work in 17 other countries. And over the last few years, I had the opportunity to work for some of the biggest food service companies in the world. Was the VP of Culinary Innovation for almost 12 years for one of them. And then I finished up my career with them being the Chief Culinary Officer for a $3 billion organization. So I've been around for a long time and had the opportunity to do a lot of things. So currently, I own a few different businesses. I have a coaching and consulting company where we help chefs to find a second career. We call it You Are Made to Be Great. I also have a nonprofit. It's called the Culinary Leadership Academy, where we give back to culinarian because the culinary schools do such a great job teaching techniques and skills. What they don't teach is real leadership. And if you get into any position of power, if you have your own business or if you manage people, you can only be successful with the right leadership skills. So therefore, it's 100% free. All of the stuff we do there, the proceeds go back to that, and we're teaching people culinary skills. Then I was approached by a friend of mine. So I'm co-owner of a few restaurants in Florida. I currently also own a food service GPO. We specialize in self-op higher education only. We started that actually in the height of COVID. Not the smartest idea, but we've been really lucky, and we just hit 45 million in revenue. So we're super excited about that.
Wow,
And then I have my own brand. I have a few books out there, and that's about it.
that's about it. Oh, and you're also a husband and father.
Yeah, I married to my best friend for over 20 years, which is really amazing. And we have four beautiful children adopted from China. So we really excited to kind of, see them grow up and seeing who they kind of turn into. It's been really an amazing journey. And the kids are really um, what I do all of this for. I want
Sure.
them to have choices, and I want to leave a legacy. And been really happy to be able to do that.
That's tremendous. So through your career, and I'd actually like to go back to the beginning, right? I mean,
Mhm.
at 19, running a restaurant, and then at 23, sorry, you had six, you said? Is
Yeah,
that
we had six. We were just on the verge to do our seventh one. And I was the first one in Austria to have a salad bar. So our concept was we were really a brasserie where the main meal came from the kitchen, and we had a salad bar. And the salad bar was out of necessity because we didn't have enough staff. It wasn't the great culinary innovation. And so that was really the thing. And we were in a really good place. We were very lucky on a corner. If you came down Main Street, if you came down from the other side, everybody seen the corner. So it was really great. And what really benefited us, we were right next to a school. So after lunch and for dinner, we had parking galore because they were, anybody could stop on parking. So parking was really our thing. And then Stouffer bought that concept, or Nestle did, and they put it into Stouffer hotels, and it became their lunch concept.
Wow. And being at that age, I mean, you're working with people that are older than you, right? There's got to be something in there in terms of your mindset saying, look, I've been trained to do this. I know I can do this. And not only expand from, like, you expand from one location to multiple locations. How do you get into that, as knowing like, hey, everything falls on your shoulders. And yet, at a younger age, like, you still have a lot to learn. So there's got to be some humility. There's a whole life lesson right there that you probably could share.
Yeah, I appreciate it. For me, it was one of those things. I loved serving customers. I loved making them happy. I love getting, hey, this was phenomenal. And that was really the driver for me. And when I look back, I got up at 3:30 in the morning. I went to the butcher shop. I got my meat. I went to the grocery, at the produce stand, for lack of better words. I got all my produce for the day. I was in the restaurant by 7:30, 8 in the morning. We were not open for breakfast, just lunch and dinner. And then, did all the cooking, and we opened up at 11:30. We served lunch till 3. We were closed between 3 and 5, and we served dinner from 5 to 10. And as we did this, so what actually, we kind of outgrew the first one. So how we had our second restaurant was we outgrew the first one, and we said, okay, let's open up the second one. And then we kind of wind this down, and we shut this thing down, and we just stay over there at the second one because it was bigger. So we opened the second one, and we were so busy on the second one, so we never shut the first one down. It became one of those things. I was like, what are we going to do? And then I had some really good support, and one of my then partners, he became my partner, said, hey, I have a restaurant. I think your concept worked better in my restaurant than my own. Can I do your thing? I was like, I don't know. We didn't do a contract. We did a handshake, and wow. I had 3. And then he came to me and he says, hey, we have this friend who has 2 restaurants. Can we do the same deal with him? I don't know. Yeah, sounds good. So we had 5. And it became one of those things. And then the last one was, we went to a local hotel, and we always, went there after work because they were open to midnight, open to midnight. They didn't close to midnight. So when we were done, we went there and have a drink there. And they said, oh, you the guys from over there, you should guys do our food. Sounds good. Okay, we do it. We start next month. And that became our 6th one. And it was the most successful one. And I think that's what sold everybody, because at the time, nobody had time for lunch. In Austria, lunch break is 3 hours. And just people wanted to have something really quick. And what we by default did, we had 56 items on our salad bar. And again, it was one of those things not planned. We did it because the first cooler I had, I found ways to fill it up because it looked ugly without it. So it wasn't, I said, oh, I have 56 items. It became one of those things. We just filled it up, and then it just became one of those things. And when I look back, I laugh about it because I get asked a lot, why did you do it? Why didn't you give up on after the first one? And for me, I was more interested and more focused on providing great value, serving our customers, over-deliver than anything else. And I had no contracts on the 2 partners I had. It was now you would call it a franchise,
Right.
We had no agreement. We sat down the end of the month. The guy says, hey, I made X profits. Okay, 50% goes to you, 50% goes to me. I was like, okay, I was happy. And that's how we kind of worked. And we always made the commitment, whatever we did, the 50% of the profits, 50% of that went back into the business. And it always looked great. We always invested into it. People always seen us expanding and doing more. And I think that became one of our things where people said, hey, it's not the same old. You guys are always doing something new. We actually didn't do anything new. We just renovated and did other stuff. So it became one of those things. And for me, that became a life lesson, because during the first and second restaurant, I was in a car accident, and I think I
Right.
told you the story.
Yeah.
And I was out for 18 months. I was in a hospital for 14 months. And the hardest thing for me was that I was told by the doctors, you need to find a way to shut down your restaurant because this business is over for you. And I don't know what within me said, hey, I gotta prove him wrong. And it took a long time. But for me, doing this, what I do, and being able to serve, I couldn't have seen myself sitting home at 19, at the time 20, doing nothing. So for me, the restaurant was my life, and it wasn't just my life. It was who I was. It was my identity. And I always loved it, telling the story now. People said, you didn't go out partying? No, because we were open 6 days a week. On my seventh day, I was sleeping half the day. And then in the afternoon, I went back to the restaurant and I prepped for the next day. And, it was, listen, when I think back, it was probably not the smartest move from a personal life. But I really enjoyed it. And it gave me the foundation of the career I'm in today, and I absolutely love it.
So things like, reinvesting in the business, scaling the business, and figuring out how to do that, how to actually put the operations in place so you can now manage a couple locations with people that you did a handshake relationship on
Mm-hmm.
with, and then later, selling this entity to a larger corporation. I mean, was all this intuitive, or you had help? It sounded like you alluded to it a little bit, like you had
Yeah.
some mentors or coaches that could help you do this.
So there was always one thing I always believed in: everybody needs a mentor, everybody needs a coach. And part of our hotel, we had this. There was another area not far from us where all of the Austrian tennis team practiced. And at the time, in Austria, we had a famous tennis player. His name was Thomas Muster, who became in '95 the world number one. And his goal was that when I'm world number one tennis player, I retire, and he did. But the amazing thing with him was, and so I became friendly with him, and when I watched him practice, he had all these people around, and I asked him, so what I saw? Oh, he is my condition coach. He's my forehand coach, and he was a lefty. He's my backhand coach. He helps me with my serve. And I was like, why can you Wamper guy? And he says, he's really good at it. This guy could do both, but he's much better at this. And he
Yeah.
kind of surrounded himself with the team. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then intuitively for me, I always thought I had this learner's mindset. So as I came back to the restaurant, and one of my partner's name was Joe. It's funny that no one around the partners is Joe. We came back and I said, hey, what we need to do is, you really good at this. Hey, he's really good at that. Let's all come together. And I created what would you now call a mastermind. I didn't know what a mastermind was. And we met
Right.
every Thursday from when we were closed from 3 to 5, because we couldn't do it beforehand because people were off. We couldn't do it on the weekend because we were busy. So Thursday was our night. So we met every Thursday from 3 to 5. And it was really a mastermind, if I think back. And everybody came. I'm not good at making drinks. I'm no way a bartender. But we had Peter, and Peter was the best. And when he said, hey, you have this food, I can make a drink to go with it. And it became this whole partnership, which was great. And for us, scaling for me was super scary at first. But for me, as we had the first two, it was almost like, when you have the adrenaline, I want to do more. Let's do
Yeah.
3, do 4. And then we did 6. Our goal always was, because we were 3 partners, we want to have 30 of them, and each of us have 10. So that was our goal.
Oh, wow.
And so one of my partners was really the business side. So he was a much better businessman than restaurateur.
Hmm.
The other guy was a much better finance person than restaurateur. And by default, we made a really good team. And that's who we had. And as we sold, one of the things the other 2 guys said, hey, they came to me, we should sell because we are older, we want to retire. You young, it sets you up and you can do whatever you want. And they give you a job for 20 years. At the time, my agreement was that I have a job with them for 20 years.
Yeah.
You get to travel, you should do that. And they kind of talked me into it. And that was really how it went down.
Wow. And so you get into that position. Now, what's that transition like? Like, did you get demoted, or like you were put in another role now that these restaurants really weren't yours anymore? Like, how
Hmm.
did you make that shift and say, okay, I've got basically this new challenge that I haven't done before?
Yeah, so that's great. So I didn't speak English, so I took at school French because it was part of Culinary. They needed to speak French, and I took Russian because it was cool. It was sounds really masculine, so I needed to
Yeah.
learn Russian just to mess with people. And so my restaurant, we sold it in June of 1992, and we said we need to be out, and the whole partnership happened at the end of August, and then they taking the idea, we shutting down our locations on September 1st. And how it would happen. So they came to me, you should come to the US. You're really good in restaurants. And at the time, my specialty was sous vide and cooked chill. And in the US, nobody ever heard about that as I came to the US in 92. And I always loved chocolate. Working with chocolate for me came natural. They said, you need to go to America. You could work for Nestle chocolate. Nestle chocolate,
Yeah.
at the time. So I closed my restaurant September 1st. We cleaned up on the 2nd and the 3rd. I took the 4th off. The 5th, I packed. The 6th, I came to America. And it was one of those things. And I landed in New York City, and this guy, which was supposed to pick me up, was late, and I didn't even know how to call him, and I couldn't ask
Oh no.
anybody how to call him. I went back into the airport, and I came with Austrian Airlines. I was like, you guys need to help me because they spoke German. And they helped me. And yeah, that's how it went down.
And so did you have to grow into a role, or was a role made for you? Did you have to then
So
mentor other people to take over, like,
um,
and build the business, or?
that's a great question. So my first position with them was Nestle at the time didn't have full-time employees. They had
Oh,
what they called contractors. So
okay.
they said, hey, you can live wherever you want. At the time I lived in New York, in Queens. You can live any place you want. And they had this board where you could apply for jobs and things. So I lived in Queens, and so I traveled. So if Aramark, for an example, needed me, I went to Aramark and I helped them with a concept. So I traveled in the US. And then I made two friends, a German guy, Wolfgang Bierer, and a Swiss guy, Jörg Wiesner. And so we kind of became friends, and we did different projects together. And eventually, I'm not sure how many countries I did with them, but I took little projects. And at the time, they had this board. Hey, who wants to go to South Africa
Hmm.
and learn South African food culture? It's me, because I'm a learner guy. I want to learn.
Yeah.
Who wants to learn? Develop a few products, come back, develop them, and sell them back to South Africa. And the R&D center at the time was in New Milford, Connecticut. That's how I wound up here in Connecticut.
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, I go 8 months South Africa. I'm up for that. And then, I did 17 countries, and it was in some of them was only 3-4 months, and some of them was 9 months. And just immersing yourself in the culture, learning all of that. So that was so cool. But I was so used to go, go, go. So I was like, I open up a restaurant. So I was in Woodbury, Connecticut. So I had really a full-time job where I traveled 100 days a year. I was like, I open up a restaurant. I found a friend of mine who also came to the US a few years earlier. I was like, you and I should open up a restaurant. So we opened up one in Woodbury, Connecticut. And he said, I hate the snow. I want to go to Florida. So we opened up a second one in Florida. He was in Florida. I was in Woodbury. I ran a restaurant and still did all this stuff with Nestle on the side. And then Nestle said, you need to
Wow.
stop that. So, but I did this from 92 to 98. And so, I did that. And then in 2005, Nestle said, we're closing the R&D center in New Milford, Connecticut. You can go to Brazil. It was Switzerland, and there was one other country. And at the time, I met my now wife, and I said, hey, honey, we have the opportunity to go to Austria, all of these places. She said, no. So I had to find a job. And so I worked. Compass was one of my clients. So I went to Compass. I said, I want to work for you guys. And they said, when can you start? It was like, didn't even interview with them.
Wow.
It was a handshake. And it was also one of those things. I left Nestle on the end of January. February 2nd, I worked for Compass Group. And at the time I was the director of Culinary, and then became the VP of Culinary. Managed almost a $4 billion organization in the higher education industry for 14 years, and was great. And so yeah, I've been really higher education focused most of my life. And that's how I wound up. And then for the last 2 years, I was the chief culinary officer for a division of Compass Group, which did healthcare. So I also have a little bit of healthcare background.
So a lot of people would say that, the restaurant industry's changed a lot, and yet I imagine many things are
Yeah.
still the same, right? But you're running a restaurant on the side. You have a full-time job. There are some people that are trying to figure it out. How to maybe scale their restaurant, or even just make it profitable. Like, what do you view as what's the difference between a successful restaurant and a restaurateur, and one that maybe isn't, just broadly
Yeah.
speaking, that you've seen?
So I always say it's for me, it was always really simple. If it's a hobby for you, you will never scale. If it's a career and a business for you, you will. And one thing I learned a long time ago is, I think for me, the opening was I loved working for myself. Always have. I think I work more when I'm on my own than I work for somebody. For me, I love working for myself. And seeing and building something from scratch always gave me a lot of satisfaction. And if you ask me what is the honest difference, is mindset. And a lot of people are scared to scale, or they scale too fast, or they don't ask for help. They don't surround themselves with the right people to help them and make them successful. For me, it starts and ends with self-leadership, which is a mindset thing. And I think it's John Maxwell who quotes, and he says, everything rises and falls around leadership. I think I want to take this a step further. Everything rises and falls around self-leadership, because if I can get myself to take action, if I can get myself to ask for help when I need help, if I can get myself to pick up the phone and say, hey, I really need your help, and for some reason, Eric, I feel a connection with you. Let's work on something. And maybe 2-3 months, maybe we do a business or we become best friends. And for me, I always looked at when I met somebody, I always felt there was either 2 or 3 reasons. Definitely 2, that I needed to learn from them, or they needed to learn from me. And the third reason, which I take a step further, is maybe we need to work together. And it really became, now when I think back, my life mission. That's how I built all my businesses or my partnerships, which we were friends first, and we developed something, and that's what came out of it.
That's great. So, as one thing I'd like to close with is someone's looking at this industry and saying, like, yeah, I want to open up a restaurant, or I want some sort of food service business, whatever it is, or maybe they want to be a private chef.
Yep.
What would you say to them? They don't know anything about the industry. Maybe they're making a career change, or maybe they're young and this is their career that they're going into without much experience, right? Yeah. What's your advice to them?
That's a really good question. I'm a list guy, and I work on lists. I love lists. I love electronic, but I live on lists. So if I would do this over again, and that's also, I always tell myself, everything I do, I kind of ask myself, if I do this, what would I tell my 23-year-old self as I came to the States? And for me, it's really simple. I would make a list. What is the things I'm really, really good at? What is the things I need help with? And I would surround myself with the people on the things I need help with, and I will go all in on the things I'm good at. I will surround myself with a group of people which under no circumstances let me fail, which have my best interest in mind, and I reciprocate that for them. I will build the team first and then do it. And I think it's a lot easier to do it. I think you are more likely to succeed. You've already heard it said that 80% of the restaurants fail after the first year. Yeah, 92 right. of them after 5 years. There's only 8 or less % of restaurants actually make it up to 10 years. And I honestly believe is the people which get into the restaurant business, creating a job for them, they don't create a business. Right. So for you, it's really stepping back and say, how can I build a business out of that, which can run without me being there? A customer should not know that I'm not there today. How can I build that with the right team and with the right support? And then you can scale. You can scale if you're the guy in charge making the soup. You can scale if you're the guy opening up and closing every day. You will not have the bandwidth to do it. And you can only do it with the right people around you. with the right mindset, because you need people which think like you. Because if you hang out with 5 negative people, there's a very good chance you're the sixth one. If you hang out with 5 positive people, there's a very good chance you get to the next level. And that's how you need to tackle it. I think people overcomplicating it. It's a fun industry. It's an amazing industry. There's very few industries where you can create something phenomenal. Some says that was just the best thing I ever had. And it's also the easiest business in a way. If somebody says, hey, my coffee is cold, I'm sorry, I make you a new one. And it's, instant satisfaction. It's really easy to click. I always use my brother as an example. He builds homes, takes him 6, 8, 10 months, and sometimes a few years. If somebody comes back and says, this bathroom sucks, it's too small, there's really nothing you can do. It is what it is. And that's with the food industry, it's instant satisfaction. You can make a customer, if they upset, you can win them back over. And if you come from a place of service and say, hey, no matter what, it doesn't matter what food I do, what it looks like, I service the hell out of my customer, you will always succeed.
That's fantastic. Well, I appreciate you sharing all this with me and with everyone watching. And I appreciate your time. So it was good to connect and good to talk again.
Same here. I'm happy to be here. If anybody else wants to have more information, please link my information, DM me. I'm more than happy to help and hopefully provide some insight. And hopefully you got some value out of this listening, and maybe it sparked something in you.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it sparked a lot of things. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.